Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What is up? Dave here from Metal Epidemic, joined by Duncan and by Kyle.
Genuinely thought he was going to go, what's that? For no reason at all. 90s callback.
90s. Hope everyone's safe and well. Thank you for joining us on another album review. For this review, Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from French avant-garde metal band Celeste. The band's new album, Assassines, will be released on January 28th via Nuclear Blast Records. So far so good. No mispronunciations so far.
Yeah, there's a long road to toe there. Yeah, I don't know if I pronounced the word nuclear right.
So this is the album number 6 from Celeste, which follows up their very well received album Infidels from 2017. And I suppose in quite a few ways this album is a bit of a fresh start for the band. They recently signed to Nuclear Blast Records after being with a kind of fairly small label, and they felt like musically this was a good opportunity to do something fresh and different to kind of to Infidels. And I enjoyed Infidels. Like, I had a listen to that album, quite enjoyed the kind of sound they were putting across on that album, so I was looking forward to hearing what they were going to do with this new release. The album was also produced by Chris Edrich, who's worked with Gojira, Clone, Hypnose, Deluge, Tesseract,
a bunch of French bands, is that what you're saying?
The Ocean. The list goes on.
We're going out to like British bands now and German as well, but yeah.
So I was definitely expecting big things from this new album from Celeste. And to me, you can hear on Assassines that they've really pushed more of that kind of melancholic streak that they had in places compared to Infidels. Definitely almost more kind of light and shade throughout the album, more of a contrast, which I kind of felt made a lot of the tracks feel more kind of individual on this album. Definitely a lot more kind of standout moments for me, which is something that it wasn't a huge issue, but sometimes their albums sounded very kind of continual rather than separate tracks. I didn't get that with Assassines at all. Each track usually would kind of fade out, so you could tell when you were on a kind of new section or passage of the album, and it didn't feel too like, you know, sometimes you get that feeling when there's like 2 or 3 songs might have been joined together. You're not quite sure which track you're on. I didn't get that at all with this album, which I much preferred compared to the last album. And I think that would be partly down to the way this album was written. Obviously, kind of like COVID has pushed bands into having to think in new ways to write and be creative. So this album wasn't written in the rehearsal room like most of the others. This album forced the band into kind of rebuilding their writing process, and it ended up that each member of the band actually went away separately and came up with their own ideas and compositions, which would, you know, it could have been an absolute disaster. But actually bringing all the different styles of writing and different approaches together seems to kind of have paid off on this album. Some members went more melodic, where other members went a bit more aggressive, or others went in a kind of slightly darker tone. And what they got in the end was an album that's probably their most diverse release to date. It still sounds very cohesive, even though the writing was a bit more kind of fragmented. But more importantly, it still sounds like a Celeste album. And Celeste do sound pretty unique in themselves. Although they have influences and bands that they look up to, they don't necessarily sound like any of those bands. You know, I couldn't put my finger on like one band in particular and say, oh, right, this is clearly Celeste's main influence. They do have their own thing going. In saying that, there were a couple of bands that did come to mind
French by any chance, Dave?
Maybe French.
Yeah.
A couple of times throughout the album.
I was thinking, is like before we go and do the thing that I know we're going to do you think that's just France? like certain areas have set, like we talk about when we talk about hardcore, specifically about that kind of like the kind of New York hardcore scene.
Yeah.
The bands from there all sound very distinctly New York hardcore, right? When we talk about things like the new wave of British metal or the new wave of American heavy metal as genres, the bands all very much sound of a tone, of a sound. That I'm now just getting. We've listened to so many French metal bands now, and it's easy to say, oh, they kind of sound a little bit like Gojira. That I'm now just thinking maybe it's less that these sound like Gojira and that Gojira sound like a French metal band.
Could be, yeah.
I don't want to steal your thunder though.
No, you kind of did. Firstly, some of the kind of slower, more monolithic riffs do exude a little bit of Gojira, like has to be said. It's not been like ripped from the Gojira playbook or anything, but it's definitely there. But also, a French band I used to listen to years ago that put out a couple of albums over their career. The band were called As They Burn. And they were a kind of metalcore band from Paris. Their first album, Aeon's War, was the kind of more experimental of the two albums they put out. And there were more moments during Assassins that took me right back to that album. Track 2, Dites Yux Bleu Perles, which is From Your Pearl Blue Eyes. Especially had some riffs and atmospherics that reminded me of that band. And then their follow-up album, Will Love Life, also worth a listen. A little bit more polished. They'd signed to a kind of bigger label by then, a little bit more established. But definitely Aeon's War had some similarities with Celeste. I think one of the kind of things I enjoyed about this most was the kind of flow of this album. I think they got that spot on this release. As I said, I like that it has more kind of distinct tracks rather than kind of one long sounding piece. And I think adding in tracks like track 5, which is just called A, which kind of works as a middle section to the album, before moving on to tracks like Il Attente Rêve de Els, which was He Dreamed of Them So Much, just flowing right off the tongue here. Which is a bit more kind of pummeling.
I'm sorry to our French speaking listeners.
A bit more kind of hefty in the riffs department. I also liked when they did push more of that kind of Blackened sound.
Yes, Dave. Now we're talking. Get to that.
Now we're talking.
Hear it. This is the big selling point for me on this album, by the way.
Yeah. Not only does this have like the kind of the metalcore, a bit post-hardcore, and clearly a kind of black metal influence. You can hear that kind of running through the album. I think I got it probably most on the album Closer, which is fittingly called Le Coeur Noir Charbon, which is
that right there. It's warming up. It's warm up. The throat's warm.
You would have thought I was French there. That is the Charcoal Black Heart, if you want the English version.
The only way it could have been more French is if you wore a beret.
I'll just get a wee drink of this white wine here. The more blackened kind of guitars, and even the vocals from Johan are a bit more kind of piercing on that closing track, which I really enjoyed. Actually kind of put me in mind of Gojira a little bit in certain places, to some of the chords and the pacing of the track. The production is also fantastic on Assassins. Very similar in style to Infidels, so I'm not sure if they used Chris Edrich on that album as well, but again, everything is very thick, very powerful sounding, that delivers plenty of atmosphere when it needs to as well. The only small criticism I have is the album does feel a little repetitive rhythmically, which Infidels is a little bit guilty of too, but I do feel like there are moments on this album where I wish they would try a kind of more intense tempo, or even go the opposite way and give us something a bit more slow burn. There are like rhythmical changes in the riffs, so it's not totally like feels like it's stuck in the same gear for the whole album, but I think a change in tempo might have just kind of elevated it to that next level. But for me, that was the only thing that really kind of was on my mind when I was listening. I just felt like it needed a little bit more of a kind of tempo change here and there. But aside from that, I thoroughly enjoyed this. And I'd highly recommend checking this one out. If you were a fan at all of Infidels or the album before, then definitely give this a listen. It's a really, really good album. What about you guys? Duncan, what did you think of Assassins?
Yeah, there's a lot to like here. I think the big thing that stuck out to me, and you were touching on it towards the end there, is the introduction of the more kind of Blackened style of vocals.
Yeah.
Which I think makes them stand out. I think that's what really differentiates them from not only a lot of the bands from their country, but also a lot of bands that play in the kind of post-metal kind of soundscape. Post-metal can at times work in two fashions, where vocally it can sound like very almost monotone, but like a heavy shouty style of vocals, like bands like ISIS are a good example of that, or something like Cult of Luna. Or they can go the other way and do something with a lot more melody. The Ocean is a great example of that, where they comfortably sit in, huge melodic sections with vocal melodies. The one thing you don't often see is the Blackened element. Yeah. And that got me quite excited, because we talk about this quite a lot on our reviews, about how black metal as a genre doesn't necessarily make any of us feel warm and fuzzy inside, but using that as a tool to put into a different genre and splice them together is usually where it works best for me. And that's his register and his vocals are fucking great. I also love the fact that he clearly can't do the soft melody stuff, so when you get a track like A, which really allows the band to play that melody section, he just stays off that, and that is a great choice. Just make that track an instrumental. You don't have to try and do anything there. Even when they get heavier in that track, it would be really easy to bring the vocals in there, and they don't do it. They leave, they keep it out as much as they can, and I think that's smart. It's also, its placement is really good on the album, because like you say, Dave, there isn't a huge amount of diversity in terms of tempo. I felt this album felt long, longer than its 41 minutes, and thankfully I think it would have worked a lot more detrimentally to them if they didn't have that track 5 in there, which really does it breaks up, gives it more room, and then the band kind of come back together. Post-metal in itself is a genre that tends to be very repetitive and samey with tempo in an album. So I'm not going to criticise them for that. I think the riffs are great. I think they do at times have shades of Gojira, and I'm glad that you mentioned Clone as well, because the melancholic moments here really reminded me of Clone. Although Clone don't do it nearly as heavy as this, I think it works very, very well. Production is faultless. I mean, this is pristine production. It is cold. It's a very, very, very cold production, and it works with the sound. It fits in really nicely. I think my maybe only issue out with that it felt marginally too long was, I think they're missing a trick with including more instrumentation here. I think some of the segments where it is very kind of just the band, just the guitars, bass, vocalists and drums and all the rest. There's a missed opportunity for the inclusion of atmospherics or something else in there, just to break up some of the songs, just
some
to add
strings,
an additional layer.
Strings would work really well.
Really, really well with it. And I don't know if that's something that would interest them at all. I don't think it's it's not something that would be a deal breaker from my point of view of them not having it, because listening to the album, there's still a lot to enjoy here. But this is, it is a very accomplished, very well written, very well executed example of a band who I've never heard of before, so I didn't check out any of their previous stuff, but this is their debut on Nuclear Blast, and I think there's an audience for this. I think there is legs on this album enough to take them to the next level, notwithstanding the fact that they've got a bigger label behind them. I think there's content here that'll work really well, and I had actually been thinking as well, when you were breaking it down, they're also a band that would scarily work on a lot of different bills. Very, very easily you could plug them into a lot of different like genre styles, and it would work very, very well effortlessly without sounding like complete. Well, why is this band on the bill? So I think they've got a lot going for them. I think, like I say, maybe the addition of something else in the background would maybe like make the songs stand out a bit more. Than changing like rhythms or whatnot, or even pacing. But yeah, it's a great album. Surprise, surprise, another amazing French band.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got it down. That's something in the water, clearly. But yeah, I had a lot of time for Celeste.
Nice. Kyle, what did you think of Assassins? Now, bear in mind, the vocalist is also playing bass here, Kyle. Just wanted to drop that in just quickly before you give us your thoughts on the album.
I did read that as I was listening to it, and I'm thinking, how the fuck are you doing both of those jobs so well at the same time? No, I like this a lot. There's a lot to love here. There really is. Yeah. From the Gojira-y stuff, which of course I latched onto because I love the Gojira. The production is pretty damn great. There's a little bit of studio fuckery, but we could let it go. Yeah. Because the riffs and all that, excuse me, the riffs and all the song structures, it doesn't follow like regular song structure most of the time, and I quite like that. It keeps you guessing a little bit, even if the tempos are a bit samey and the rhythms are a bit samey all the way through. It keeps you interested, especially with that song A in the middle of it. It's fantastic. No, I mean, it's just lots of. I'm just going to be echoing stuff you've already said. It's very, very good. Lots of things to like and listen to and go back and listen to, and it's got a good reward on re-listens as well. There's stuff in there that you wouldn't necessarily have picked up the first time. And no, I enjoy that they've got that Blackened element like you've mentioned, and I agree. It's definitely setting them apart from the rest of the world of where they come from in France, and especially out in the rest of the world as well. There's no one that sounds quite like them. They've definitely got their influences, but they're still a unique band, which is really good. I haven't really heard anything quite like this. Similar things, yeah, but not anything that's, it's got those rhythms and the Blackened thing and the crazy vocals, and and they're not pushing things out too far in the world of like all of the instrumentation either. They're just like, this is us, this is what we are, here we are, and I really like that. So no, I think the last song is my favorite actually. The what's it called? It's pronounced ooh la la. It is absolutely not. It's the Black Heart of Coal. No, Black Heart of Coal. I think it's my favourite song in the whole thing. I'm not going to try French. There's a few languages I can do, but French is not one of them. No.
Okay, fair enough. I was hoping you were going to do it there, but no. Okay, it's fine.
Nope.
Okay,
you're the master of French here. I'm not stepping on your toes.
Okay, very well. Moving on. We will now give our grades for this new album from
a bad episode of Lolo.
French grades or English. I'm going to go English, just for the viewers. I think this is a very, very strong album. I agree that the post metal thing does bring a certain kind of tempo and rhythm to these tracks. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, if it was predominantly that all the way through, I think you could argue that it's not an issue. But they do mix a lot of other things in there. So
they do, but I feel like they could mix a bit more in the tempo front. Like they're blending in metalcore, hardcore, and black
Simmons,
metal.
Look at here. Fucking.
They're bringing in all these other styles.
Yeah.
And I feel like, why are you not using like more of that, like a little bit more of tempo, a little bit more kind of black metal speed, or a little bit more kind of hardcore speed? I feel like they could bring more of that into it. That being said, still a thoroughly enjoyable album, very well executed, excellent production, definitely one that I'll go back to as well. As you said, it's a touch long, I'd agree with you there, but the more you kind of go back to it, the more things that you start to kind of pick out of it and enjoy. So I can see myself going back to this one. I'm going to go 4 out of 5 on this one from Celeste. Duncan, what are you thinking?
Cat Trap Pois.
Oh.
Cat Trap what?
Yeah. Cat Trap Pois. That's right. I've watched Eurovision. I know how they do this. It's 4 points.
4 points, Kyle. 4 points.
4 points.
Okay, great.
Kyle?
I was in French class for a year and they kicked me out because I was useless. 4 out of 5, yeah.
4 out of 5. Nice.
Again? Jesus fucking Christ. Right, I've had enough of you guys. We're agreeing too much.
Yeah. I'll sort that out. For next week, I'll sort that out. Don't worry.
Oh, he's got a trick up his sleeve, hasn't he?
So the new Celeste album, Assassines, drops on January 28th on Nuclear Blast Records. I'll stick some links below to their Facebook and to their pre-order link. Check out the album. Let us know what you think. Have a listen to some of the tracks they've released. Once you've heard the album, drop some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is the review. Thanks for checking it out. We'll be back with a new review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Je suis désolé.
He's alright.
Sexy son of a bitch.
He's alright.